Welcome to Module 2, What Must We Change in How We Teach Reading? This learning module is the second in a series of 3 learning modules from our Sunshine Workshop 1. For this module, you will need your printed PDF workbook. You'll be asked to complete activities in your workbook throughout this module, so please have a pen and highlighter ready. You'll need to pause the recording to complete these tasks. Each slide shows the relevant workbook page number in the bottom left-hand corner. We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands and waters across Australia and pay our respects to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Remember that structured literacy is an ongoing journey, from seeking knowledge to building understanding, to confidently and thoughtfully applying the approach in practice. We begin this module with a review. On page 2 of your workbook, you have bullet points covering the key findings from the science of reading. These bullet points include sentences with keywords missing. Your task is to select the correct words to make these sentences make sense. This activity forces retrieval of key learning covered in Module 1. This task should take you approximately 5 minutes. Pause the recording to complete the task. Let's go through the answers. Reading is not a natural process. Reading is a modern invention and therefore must be taught explicitly. We previously believed that learning to read was like learning to speak. We now know that the skills that good readers implement and the associated parts of the brain that are involved in the reading process. Likewise, we know what aspects we should assess and teach to students who are not progressing in reading and spelling. We now know that all brains learn to read in the same way and that these areas of the brain can be taught and developed. We do not store whole words. We process them as parts and very quickly put them back together. We do this through phonology and orthography, the way words sound and the way they are spelt. Storing words in our memory is called orthographic mapping. The brain slowly learns to convert letters to the sounds they represent, and over time this process speeds up so that a child can process the sounds in words almost instantly. A structured literacy approach to learning to read and spell is necessary for all and crucial for some. It is the most efficient teaching and learning approach for dyslexic children and those with reading difficulties. The teaching of spelling in a systematic and explicit way enables students to become capable readers and writers. Teachers have to build their understanding of the English language, for example, origins of words, etymology, and word part meanings, morphology. The science of reading improves student outcomes. Our approach begins with prevention, ensuring that all students receive high-quality Tier 1 classroom literacy instruction. We then focus on intervention, with the early identification of students who require additional targeted literacy support. At the core of our teaching is explicit instruction, systematic and explicit teaching that maximises opportunities for all students to learn to read, write and spell. This is supported by clear teaching and assessment processes, with ongoing assessment of reading and spelling guiding instructional decisions. Finally, professional practice continues to evolve as instruction is refined in response to growing knowledge about effective literacy teaching. When we know better, we do better. In this module, we begin by examining balanced literacy and its key features. We then analyse predictive and decodable texts, highlighting the differences between them and why those differences matter for early readers. From there, we take a closer look at decodable texts and their role in supporting novice readers. We compare balanced literacy and structured literacy, exploring what is similar and what is different in both approach and practice. We unpack the elements and principles of a structured literacy approach, connecting these directly to classroom practice. We also explore the building blocks of reading and writing, the components of effective literacy block, and the importance of explicit teaching of new skills and knowledge. Finally, we consider the role of assessment in guiding instruction and supporting all learners. What must we change in how we teach reading? In a balanced literacy approach, reading instruction commonly used levelled predictive text for guided reading. Reading progress was measured using a colour wheel levelling system, where magenta was the first level, followed by red and so on. These texts controlled sentence length, vocabulary and text complexity, but didn't account for phonics knowledge or phonemic stamina. National standards expected students to progress at the same rate, with an expectation that most students would reach green level after 1 year of school. Some students did reach green, but then plateaued, finding it difficult to read text beyond this point. As text demands increased, students struggled with more print on the page and more complex vocabulary. In many cases, students had relied on memorisation or compensatory guessing strategies rather than secure word reading skills. The 3 cueing system encouraged students to use meaning, structure and visual cues. So we'd say things as a teacher to students like, does it make sense? Does it sound right? And finally, does it look right? We'd often get students to get their mouth ready for the word. So they'd just say that first sound, they'd look at the picture and they'd guess at that word. Research shows these strategies are ineffective for novice readers as they draw attention away from print and discourage systematic word reading. Here we're going to analyse a predictive text. This one is from Sunshine Books, and back in the balanced literacy days we used to give this book to 5-year-olds perhaps in their first week of being at school. But we can see by the title alone, Faces, that there's a lot of complexity here from a reading point of view. We've got the A representing the long sound. We've got the C representing the soft sound, so it's, and then we've got the suffix S on the end of that word. So on these 2 pages, you'll notice that we've got a repetitive structure. This is A on both pages. In the first page, the child, once they've got the structure of this is A, they can then look at the picture and guess at the word. This is a clown. From a reading perspective, clown is quite complex because it starts with adjacent consonant, CL, and then it also has a vowel team in there, digraph, OW. On the second page, we've got a schwa, so the upside down E symbol is a schwa, so that's a lazy vowel sound. So in monster, the multisyllable word monster, the end sound is not said as but is said as a. There's also adjacent consonants in there with the ST. On the next 2 pages, we've got another schwa, and this is a dragon. So instead of dragon, if we read it phonetically, we actually say it dragon. So the O is representing an is sound here. We've got our adjacent consonants at the beginning. And then in monkey, we've got the complexity of the O being pronounced as an sound, and then a vowel digraph. So multi-syllable words also appearing on both of these pages. Finally, on this page, we actually have our first CVC word, so consonant, vowel, consonant pattern. This is a cat. This is a mouse. We've got the S, which is followed by an E. The E is actually not representing any sound at all. And then we've got our vowel digraph, the OU there. And finally, this is me, with an exclamation mark on the end. So if we look at the analysis of this predictive text, we can see that we've only got 1 decodable word in the entire book, and that was cat. Then we've got our tricky words, this, is, and me. And they're tricky because they've got sounds in them that we wouldn't expect if we're teaching through a scope and sequence. And we've got our consonant digraph TH, we've got long vowels and me, we've got the S representing the Z sound. So there are 20 different graphs that the children need to know if we're expecting them to actually read this book or decode this book. There's 1 suffix with the S on the end. We've got our digraphs, our consonant digraph with TH, and then we've got our vowel digraphs, OW, E, Y, and OU. We've got our adjacent consonants, which are quite complex for children. They require articulation across 2 sounds, which can be quite tricky. Then we've got our alternate sounds and spellings, punctuation that the children need to know about, full stops, exclamation mark, and then knowing about uppercase letters. Then we've got our split digraphs and our schwa. So the A is separated from the E. The E makes the A say its long sound, and then we've got our schwa in our multi-syllable word monster and dragon. So from a decoding perspective, you can see how difficult this is for a novice reader, and how it is actually that the child is needing to look at the pictures and memorize those phrases to look like they're reading this particular book. When viewed through the lens of current research on how the brain learns to read, predictive texts do not reliably support the development of the neural reading network in novice readers. They encourage the use of contextual cues rather than systematic word reading processes. Here we have a decodable text from Sunshine's Series 1, Set 1. It's the third book in this particular set. The children would have already been taught letter-sound relationships for the first 8 sounds of the Sunshine scope and sequence. So those letters are S, A, T, P, I, N, M and D. So this title, Dip In, is very decodable for those particular children that are reading this book. On the next page we've got Dan dips in. So all of those particular sounds that they've been taught in the scope and sequence are there. The only complexity here, I would say, is the addition of the S on the end of the word dip, making it a 4-sound word rather than just a 3-sound word. So the reason why that S is there, we'd teach the children, it's dip is an action word, so the S is there, it's a verb suffix explaining who is doing the action. So Dan dips in. On the next page we've got Sam dips in. So here there is slight repetition in the structure, but from this moment it changes. So Dan and Sam sit. So all decodable words. And we've got capital letters for names, which we'd be teaching the children about, and also Dan is the start of a sentence, so needs a capital anyway. Then we've got Pam sits, so we've got that verb suffix again, adding complexity, but otherwise it's very decodable. Pam is in. Here we've got the word is, which is a tricky word. It has the irregular sound of the S representing the Z sound in is, so we'd have to teach that explicitly to the children. Nat is in, so the tricky word repeats here. Tip, 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 so we've got commas being used to repeat one word. Tip, tip, tip. We'd also teach the children here that capital letters and lowercase letters represent the same sound, and we use capitals at the beginning of a sentence. So here, let's have a look at the analysis of this text, and we can very clearly see the difference between this one and the previous predictive text. So there are 9 decodable words in total in the book, only one of which was a tricky word, and that was is. So there were 8 representations of sounds in here, and these are the S, A, T, P, I, N, M, D. That are the sounds for this first set of the scope and sequence. We've got the suffix S twice in the book, that was that verb suffix. We have no digraphs, no adjacent consonants, or alternate spellings. We've got uppercase letters, full stops, and then the commas on that page where it was tip, tip, tip. No split digraphs. So from a novice reader perspective, once the children have learnt all those the letter sound correspondences for the first 8 sounds, they can manage this book, practice the skills they've learnt to read this particular text using their decoding skills. Decodable text is designed to support a synthetic phonics method of teaching. They're temporary tools that enable students to practice decoding using the letter sound correspondences and the tricky high frequency words that they have learned to that point. Phonemes and graphemes are taught explicitly and systematically through a carefully designed scope and sequence. Text is controlled by and limited to the phonemes and graphemes taught to that point. High frequency words that are not as easily decodable but necessary for all stories need to be explicitly taught alongside this. Once students know their first set of sounds and have had practice learning how to blend these sounds together to make words, they can start reading their first decodable text and can experience success from their first book. Sunshine texts are great because they are real stories following likeable characters and narrative structures. They use words that children can relate to and read. The text provides opportunities to practice reading skills to acquire mastery. When I came back to teaching after being a stay-at-home mum, I found these cute visual prompts to support the 3 cueing system. You too may have come across these. So here we've got lips the fish. Get your mouth ready for that word. Try and lion. Give it a try. Skippy frog. Just skip over the word you don't know. Read on to the end of the sentence. Then the unknown word will just pop into your head. Chunky monkey. Break the word into chunks. Flippy dolphin. Flip the vowel sound. Helpful kangaroo. Ask your teacher for help. At this point I was still in balanced literacy land, so thought they were great because a picture speaks 1,000 words. I hadn't yet met the decoding dragon of structured literacy, which teaches don't guess, sound the word all the way through, keep track with your finger, break long words into syllables. When it comes to reducing cognitive load, our first module taught us that we need to limit the number of choices and highlight a clear path. So in this case, the decoding dragon teaches us we decode to read. Students learning early literacy skills need a big emphasis on learning the written code that represents the words they can speak, so that they can concentrate on reading for different purposes and move from learning to read to reading to learn. Reading and writing instruction needs to be broken down into its parts and then built up so that students have all the skills that they need to be proficient. The goal is for students to have automatic recognition of words so that they can focus on the higher order functions of language comprehension, which we had a look at when we looked at Scarborough's reading rope in Module 1. Back at the beginning of my journey, after having taught using decodable text for a couple of months, I started to have a few doubts as to what I was seeing and hearing when children read these decodable books. The reading sounded laboured and nothing at all like what I was used to when listening to students reading the predictive texts of old balanced literacy days. So I was very grateful for this blog, The Sweaty Sounding Out Stage Builds Reading Muscle, by Alison Clark, an Australian speech pathologist. She says, if you went to a gym and they told you their weights were made of polystyrene because lifting real weights makes you sweat and grunt and isn't pretty to watch, you'd walk straight out. Predictable repetitive texts are like fake weights at the gym. They make the exercise easier and less painful to watch, but they don't build reading muscle. Next time you're watching a child slowly and laboriously sounding out words in a well-selected decodable book, cheer them on. Don't wish it wasn't hard or try to make it easier. All that sweating and striving is because they're building their reading brain, which is such a powerful and wonderful thing to do and well worth the effort. This gave me the courage to continue, and I'm glad I did because I began to see amazing things start to happen as students all of a sudden took off, not only in reading but in spelling. Many children had built up enough knowledge of the code that they were now starting to show signs of implicit learning, where they were self-teaching and picking up things for themselves that I knew I had not yet covered. For a few students, their progress was slower and they required more repetitions and lots of explicit teaching, but they were progressing and developing confidence. In a balanced literacy approach, reading, spelling, handwriting and phonics were often taught as separate components. Connections between these areas were not always made explicit for students. Instruction was not consistently systematic, sequential or cumulative. The introduction of new learning was not always explicit and practice was not always structured towards mastery. Students commonly read predictive texts, which encouraged the use of contextual strategies. Students were not consistently taught or encouraged to use precise vocabulary related to the structure of the English language. As a result, a significant number of students did not meet expected curriculum levels in literacy. Within a structured literacy approach, reading, spelling, handwriting and phonics are intentionally integrated. Teachers make explicit connections between these components of literacy. Instruction is systematic, explicit, sequential and cumulative, with sufficient practice to support accuracy and automaticity. Students read decodable or controlled texts that align with taught phonics patterns. They are explicitly taught and use language related to the structure of English, such as vowel, consonant, digraph, and syllable. The goal is to increase the number of students who meet or exceed expected curriculum levels through evidence-based instruction. We'll quickly summarise the definition of structured literacy, revisiting the 2016 International Dyslexia Association infographic we looked at in Module 1. Structured literacy is a term defined by the International Dyslexia Association to describe a unifying, evidence-based framework for reading instruction. It was originally developed to support students with dyslexia and is grounded in research about how the brain learns to read. A structured literacy approach includes key evidence-based elements: phonology, sound-to-symbol relationships, syllable types, morphology, syntax, and semantics. Together, these elements address both word reading and language comprehension. Instruction is guided by clear teaching principles. Teaching is diagnostic, informed by ongoing assessment, systematic and cumulative, with skills taught in a planned sequence, and explicit, with concepts clearly modelled and practiced. When these elements and principles are combined, they result in effective, research-aligned reading instruction that supports accurate and fluent reading for all learners. Here are a few quotes about structured literacy. Lynn Stone states that structured literacy, delivered effectively, equips teachers to teach reading and adequate writing to all their students. It is a no-fail approach. From the Edith Cowan University, we have a quote that says, "The structure provides a useful plan from which to organise students' progress. The boundaries between the year levels should not be regarded as fixed. Guided by assessments of knowledge and skills, teachers will need to judge the rate at which their students are able to progress through the sequence and adapt the pace accordingly." This table shows how the principles and elements of structured literacy connect directly to classroom practice. Within a structured literacy approach, we integrate listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Assessments are administered to determine a student's strengths and weaknesses in phonological awareness and the alphabetic principle. This information determines the appropriate starting point on the scope and sequence based on student needs. From there, skills are taught in a systematic and cumulative way. The concept is introduced explicitly in isolation. For example, today we're learning to read and write words with 3 sounds, where the middle vowel says it's short sound, so CVC words. The skill is introduced at word level. Students learn phonological awareness related to the skill being taught to assist reading and spelling. For example, teaching students how to blend sounds in words might be a skill that you focus on. Students learn vocabulary and context through sentence reading and dictation tasks. Students develop fluency within the concept through the use of decodable texts. They can decode the words in the texts because they have had explicit teaching at sound, word, and sentence level. This, of course, frees up the cognitive load, allowing students to comprehend what they read. The next 2 slides draw on the work of Australian educator Jocelyn Seamer, an experienced former teacher, tutor, school leader and structured literacy expert. They illustrate the changing balance between decoding and language comprehension as students move from novice to proficient readers. For novice readers, a greater instructional emphasis is placed on decoding, as early reading comprehension depends heavily on accurate and efficient word reading. As outlined earlier in the simple view of reading, comprehension cannot develop fully if students are unable to read the words on the page. While students are learning to decode through decodable texts, teachers must also develop language comprehension through read-alouds of rich, complex texts. This supports vocabulary, background knowledge, and understanding. This remains particularly important for older students who still require explicit code-based instruction. Alongside decoding support, they should have access to curriculum-level content to ensure continued engagement with age-appropriate learning. Here we see the balance between transcription and ideation for writers, from novice to proficient. Transcription is putting ideas into written form, so it includes handwriting, spelling, punctuation and grammar. Ideation, on the other hand, is generating and organising ideas, so deciding what to write. Writing is a very complex task. For novice writers, the main focus is on automatic transcription, so that mental energy can later be spent on ideation. At the novice stage, the teacher acts as the expert, modelling the writing process using strategies like think-alouds. This diagram shows how reading and writing are built from foundational skills. Reading develops from phonological awareness to the alphabetic principle, so mapping sounds to letters, then to fluency and vocabulary, which together support reading comprehension, the ability to understand and make meaning from text. Writing begins with pre-writing skills, handwriting and spelling, then progresses to sentence structure and mechanics, and finally to larger compositions, enabling students to clearly communicate their ideas, thoughts, and understanding. Here we see the key components through which new literacy skills and knowledge are explicitly taught. Together, these elements support students to become increasingly competent readers and writers. For younger learners, it is important to consider attention span and engagement. These components may be taught in shorter, focus sessions, peppered throughout the day. I introduce many of these components during Workshop 1 modules, and then explore them more deeply in Workshop 2. This next teacher task should take you approximately 5 to 8 minutes. Take a moment to highlight the components of a literacy block that you're already including in your week or day. Where do they fit in your timetable? Note approximately how much time you allow for each component on average. Reflect on whether there are any components missing from your literacy block. Pause the recording to complete the task. For a period of time, explicit instruction in handwriting and spelling receive less emphasis, partly due to the increasing use of digital tools such as typing and spell check. Research now shows that handwriting plays an important role in literacy learning. Handwriting supports the development of neural pathways involved in spelling and word reading, so that decode-encode pathway that we looked at when we looked at the reading brain. This makes it an important component of learning to read. Handwriting strengthens the connection between letters and sounds, and should be explicitly taught both within decodable text lessons aligned to a scope and sequence, and in standalone handwriting lessons. Handwriting strengthens the connection between letters and sounds, so encouraging students to say sounds as they write them supports a multisensory approach, linking sounds to symbols. So when teaching, we prompt children to say the sounds as they write them. Say it as you write it. We start big. Write it in the air before taking it to whiteboards or paper. Within a decodable lesson structure, the links between handwriting, spelling and reading are made simultaneously. In this next video, you'll see a handwriting section from a decodable lesson. This lesson uses a sunshine sound pack and follows this structure. Students decode sounds they have learnt to this point. Students encode sounds in a shopping list down the page. Students decode their list of sounds again aloud, one at a time, as the teacher writes the list of sounds on the board. The teacher says the letter name as they write the letter.
Okay, we've got our sound pack here and we're going to read these as quickly and accurately as we can. Our vowels are at the front of the pack. We're going to say the long sound and the short sound. Then when we get to our other consonant letters, we're going to say them as purely as we can. Okay, because reading sounds is important. Off we go.
I, A,
Now we're going to write our sounds in a shopping list, one under the other, okay? And we think about formation as we write them. Okay, I will say the sound, you say the sound, and then you write it. And what are you going to do when you're writing the sound? Say the sound, because then our ears can hear it, our eyes can watch what we're doing, and our hands can feel it, and our mouth feels it too. Are you ready? Eyes on me. E. A. Think about this one. Think about the way our mouth is shaped. Watch me. D.
D. D.
Mm. Mm. Okay, what I would like you to do now is read your sounds. Touch and say. So pointing next door, off you go. All together as one voice. Off we go. Wonderful, you were all together that time. Excellent. Okay, now as you read your sounds, I'm going to put the letters, I'm going to write the letters on the board and say the name of the letter. So you have to wait for me to put my letter up before you go on to the next one. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah? All right, off you go. Say the sound of the first letter. I. Give it a tick. A. Give it a tick. P. Give it a tick. S. Give it a tick. D. Open mouth. Long stick. Give it a tick. D. M. Give it a tick. N. Give it a tick. T. Give it a tick. Well done.
Standalone handwriting lessons focus on motor mapping and the automaticity of letter formation. Letters should be taught in formation groups based on shared starting points or movement patterns. For example, letters with an anti-clockwise curve start, C, O, A, D, G, Q, etc. This supports efficient and accurate letter formation. Handwriting instructions should take place at tables where correct posture, pencil grip and letter formation can be explicitly taught and practiced. Students should also be supported during writing tasks to prevent the practice of incorrect habits. A consistent school-wide approach to handwriting instruction is essential for supporting all learners. Spelling supports orthographic mapping by strengthening the connections between sounds, letters and meaning, allowing words to become stored for fluent reading and accurate writing. Spelling involves hearing and isolating sounds and words to write them correctly and in order. In the next video, you will see a spelling section from a Decodable text lesson. This lesson uses Sunshine word cards and follows this structure. Students read words containing the focus sound. The teacher checks that the students understand what the words mean, then removes the words from view. The teacher says one of the words. Students say the word and isolate each sound on their spelling fingers. The thumb of their helping hand represents the first sound. The teacher points down and the students say the sounds as they write them. Students check their spelling by reading the words aloud again. Students chin their whiteboards to show their words or mark their books.
We're going to have a go at reading these words now. Okay, ready? Blend them to read. Go.
In. Dip. Down.
Pens up. We're going to do our shopping list of words this time. So remember, I say,
Again.
you say, we finger spell. Show me your finger spelling hands in the right position. Well done, because we use our right hand to write with. We've got our spelling hand on the other side. Okay, ready? Eyes on me. In.
In.
Saying the sounds as you write them.
In.
Okay, eyes on me. Dip.
Dip. Dip.
Think about the way to form it. Dip.
Dip. Oh God. Dip.
Penny, I love the way that you're checking what you're doing though. So your brain is telling you, that wasn't quite right, I'm going to fix it, and you're just doing that right now. When we do a D, look, we start with an open mouth, just like we say it. D. Just like we do an A. It's exactly the way we do an A, but then it has a stick. Yep. Watch this one. Looking. Around, up, down. D. Yep. D. You go over the top of yours.
What's right?
D. So we're writing dip.
Dip.
D, I, p. Say the sounds as you write them, remember, because our ears can hear it.
My pen isn't
Dip.
really working.
The next word is Dan. It is a name. So what does it need? Before you write it, I say, you say, we spell, you write. Ready? Dan.
Dan. D-A-N.
What do you think you need to fix there?
My D.
And you're going to make it?
Bigger.
Well done. Very good, because capital letters are tall. Right. Read your words. Off you go. All together as one.
In, Dan.
When we read, are we looking at my face?
No.
Where do we look?
At the board.
Okay, I want to see you doing that. Off you go.
In, dip, Dan.
Fantastic. Your first word is?
In.
I-N. Give it a tick. Your second word is?
Dip.
D-I-P. Give it a tick. And the last word is?
Dan.
Capital D, because it is a name, A-N. Give it a tick. Dust off your boards. Well done.
Dictation is the essential link between explicit phonics instruction and application in real writing. There are several positive outcomes of dictation. It allows for the systematic application of grapheme-phoneme correspondences taught. It targets new phoneme graphemes and reviews those previously taught, so learning is cumulative. It simultaneously gives an opportunity for handwriting practice and decoding and encoding at sound, word and sentence level. It gives opportunities for applying grammar conventions and morphology. It builds short-term memory and reduces cognitive load, as the student does not have to generate their own ideas. It allows for opportunities for immediate feedback and self-correction. In this next video, you'll see an example of a sentence dictation section from a decodable text lesson.
The next part of our lesson is looking at a sentence. This sentence is Dan and Sam sit. Now look, what type of letter is at the beginning?
Uppercase.
Very good. Why is it an uppercase?
Because it's somebody's name and it's at the start.
Fantastic. It's at the start of the sentence. We always start sentences with a capital and it's somebody's name. Can you find another capital letter in there?
Sam.
First letter of Sam is a capital.
Because it's someone's name.
It's someone's name. Even though it's not at the beginning of the sentence, we still use a capital letter. What is this at the end? It is a
Full stop.
So full stops go at the end of a
Sentence.
This sentence has a who and a do. Who is the sentence about?
Sam and Sam.
What are they doing?
They're splashing.
Listen to the sentence and think about what is the doing word. Dan and Sam sit. Okay, reading the sentence.
From the picture.
Dan and Sam sit. The picture does that, but we're reading the words, aren't we? So that is a little bit different to that.
Dan and Sam sit. Dan and Sam sit.
Say the sounds as you write them.
Dan. That dot is floating.
Well done. Read it again to check.
Dan and Sam sits.
Dan and Sam sit. Okay, read your sentence out again.
Dan and Sam sit.
Okay, give yourself a tick if you've got a capital D for Dan and the fact that it's the beginning of a sentence. Give yourself a tick. Give yourself a tick if you have a capital letter for the other name, which is Sam. Do you have a capital S?
No.
Okay, so that was just something to think about. Give yourself a tick if you've got a full stop at the end of your sentence. Give yourself a tick in your spaces because you've all put spaces between words. Read your sentence again for me.
Dan and Sam sit.
Fantastic. Lids on, dusting off. And that is the end of our lesson. Well done, you guys.
Tricky words contain letter sound correspondences that have not yet been taught, which means they cannot be fully decoded at first. As students learn new phoneme grapheme correspondences, some words will no longer be tricky. High frequency words appear often in English texts. Many of these words are fully decodable, while those that are not are considered tricky. Tricky words require explicit phonics explanation and repeated practice so that they can become orthographically mapped and read automatically. When introducing tricky and high-frequency words, it's important to be mindful of cognitive load and introduce them in a carefully planned way. On this slide, we see an example of the tricky words that are taught within the 2 Sunshine Decodable series. In this next video, you'll see an example of how to teach a tricky word.
Now, the book that we're reading, Dip In, has a tricky word in it. Notice down here in the book, the tricky words are down the bottom. Is. The tricky word is. When we spell a tricky word, we have to think about what sounds are what we expect and what sounds are tricky that we have to make our brains remember off by heart. So sometimes tricky words are called heart words. They're a bit irregular, so sometimes they're called irregular, but we call them tricky words. Okay, ready? We're going to count how many sounds using our spelling fingers. Eyes on me. So our word is. Is. How many sounds did we count?
2.
We counted 2. I'll put the lines up for the amount of sounds we've got. The first, so is. The first sound is? Now, that's what we've learnt that sound makes. So that's the one that is regular. Yeah, we'd expect that one. Okay, let's sound it out again. Is. Now, what do we know a z is usually? It's normally a z, isn't it? Z, but in this word, we have to remember that the s is representing the z sound, which is a bit difficult, isn't it? It's tricky. So we have to remember that one. We have to learn that one off by heart. Okay, so what I would like you to do is write that word. So I say the word, you say the word, we finger spell and you write it. And what are you going to remember?
Finger spell.
And that the tricky part of the word is the S representing the Z sound. Okay, eyes on me. Is. Fantastic. You are getting all your S's around the right way today. Have you been practicing them? Very fantastic. You've drawn a heart over the S, which is showing me that you know that that's the part you have to learn off by heart. Well done. If you can't draw hearts, do you know what you can do? What I normally do? What? I might put a line underneath the one that's the tricky part because there might be easy. Okay, so what I would like you to do is I want you to write it 3 more times. Off you go as quickly as you can. Say the sounds as you write it. Go.
Yes.
Okay. Dust off your boards.
There are multiple ways for students to practice and apply their encoding skills. Working in pairs or small groups can increase engagement, particularly when students take turns in a student-teacher role. This structure allows for focused, targeted practice. It is important to monitor whether students are transferring their phonics knowledge between reading and writing. Some students require explicit prompts to apply their learning during independent writing tasks. Clear reminders help strengthen this transfer of skills. Students begin school with varying levels of oral language, vocabulary, and language experience. These differences can create gaps from the outset. Explicit teaching of oral language supports students to learn to read and write effectively. You may have heard this saying, reading floats on a sea of talk. It is important to develop both receptive vocabulary, so words students understand through listening and reading, and expressive vocabulary, words students use when speaking and writing. Students need regular opportunities to listen and speak, structured discussion, serve and return interactions, high order questioning and teacher think aloud support language growth. Questions such as, what makes you say that? Encourage deeper thinking. Rich mentor texts expose students to complex vocabulary, grammar and sentence structures, strengthening language comprehension and supporting both reading and writing. As we know, literacy is more than phonics. Vocabulary knowledge is key to helping children understand what they read and gives them more options of words to select when writing. When selecting vocabulary to teach explicitly, it is helpful to know that we can separate vocabulary into 3 tiers. Tier 3. These are special words that belong to a particular subject or topic. You don't use them in everyday conversations. You mostly see them when you're learning science, maths, social studies, or another specific area. So examples of Tier 3 words could be photosynthesis, denominator, evaporation, parliament. Tier 2 words are useful words that you might see often in books or at school, but you don't usually see them in everyday speaking. They appear across many subjects and help you understand more complex ideas. So examples like contrast, fortunate, summarise, predict, maintain. Tier 2 words are the ones that we would generally choose to teach explicitly. Tier 1 words, these are everyday words you hear and use all the time. They're common, simple words that most people learn early in life. So examples of these would be dog, happy, house, run, ball. We must remember that for our English language learners, we may need to explicitly teach them Tier 1 words. The Sunshine word cards are additional teaching materials that are great to support the teaching of new vocabulary alongside decoding and encoding. There are free games to download from the Sunshine website that support the use of this resource. I highly recommend these for use in classrooms and to support English language learners. In later modules, you'll be able to see videos of these cards being used. The English language is morphophonemic. This means that words represent both sounds, phonemes, and meaningful parts, morphemes, in their spelling patterns. This is why morphology is a key element of teaching within a structured literacy approach. Morphology is the study of the structure of words and their components called morphemes. A morpheme is the smallest unit of meaning in a word. By explicitly teaching these meaningful parts, such as base words, prefixes, and suffixes, we help students unlock both the meaning and spelling of words. Morphemes build vocabulary, fluency, and academic prowess. They are memory hooks to make words meaningful and memorable to spell and comprehend. The morphological system speaks to the many origins of English, so Latin and Greek. Morphemes are important tools for decoding and encoding. A morpheme can be classified as a root or base word to which other morphemes are added. An affix, which is a prefix or suffix, is added to the root word to form a more complex word. Morphology is a system and benefits from being taught through a systematic approach. Vocabulary knowledge is the single most important factor in reading comprehension. Reading comprehension is understanding what we read. Comprehension is an active interaction between the text and the skills and background knowledge experience of the reader. As mentioned earlier, comprehension can be supported in the classroom by reading a range of language-rich texts, followed by teacher-facilitated and led discussion. Explicitly teaching Tier 2 vocabulary will support students to enhance their comprehension of language. Developing fluency is an evolving process. It involves 3 things: accuracy, automaticity, and prosody. Accuracy is lifting words accurately off the page. Accurate reading is dependent on the ability to decode words efficiently and the process of orthographic mapping. Automaticity, the speed and pace of word identification, needs to be effortless and without conscious thought. Prosody is the sound of reading. Prosody is the rhythmic and melodic aspects of speech. It is reading with good expression, intonation, including pitch, tone, volume, and emphasis on certain words. As mentioned in Module 1, cognitive load increases as we move from letters to words to sentences and then connected text. So it is important to ensure that fluency is developing from the simplest level through to the more complex. Assessment informs instruction. When we shift to a structured literacy approach, our assessment practices must align with what we are explicitly teaching. Effective assessment enables us to identify learners' strengths and needs. It informs planning and instruction, supports differentiated teaching, improves student confidence, and establishes a clear baseline for measuring progress. Phonological awareness is foundational to reading development, so it is essential that we assess it. This example heat map is one created from a Foundation Literacy Skills assessment, available to users of the Ideal platform. This shows a group's performance across a range of phonological awareness skills, from larger units of sound such as syllables and rhyme, through to individual phonemes. The traffic light system allows us to quickly identify patterns, determine teaching priorities, and recognise students who may require additional support. We assess phonic knowledge. Which grapheme-phoneme correspondences do students know? Can they segment and blend sounds to decode words? Are they able to read real and non-words and targeted tricky words with automaticity? Reading accuracy assessments help us determine whether a student can read an unseen decodable text at their instructional level. Reading accuracy assessments look similar to a running record, but they differ in the types of things we're looking at. We analyse the types of errors made, but instead of assessing whether they are using contextual cues, we are assessing their decoding ability, levels of automaticity, and whether the student is self-monitoring and self-correcting. We assess comprehension by asking students to recall, retell, and answer questions about the text they have read. This helps us determine their level of understanding. Encoding assessment looks at handwriting, spelling, and written sentence construction. Can the student form letters correctly? Can they segment sounds and record them in order? Can they write a dictated sentence with correct spacing, capital letters, and punctuation? This concludes the Workshop 1's Online Learning Module 2. You are now ready to begin Module 3. How do we bridge the gap from research into practice? This module is the final module in our Workshop 1 Online Learning Module series. This module demonstrates how the Sunshine Phonics Decodable program supports systematic teaching through clear sequencing, lesson planning, scaffolding of decodable texts, aligned resources and assessment tools, helping teachers confidently implement structured literacy and support reading development both at school and at home. Thank you for your time and willingness to learn. If you have any questions regarding the information contained in this module, please contact Paul at sunshinebooks.com.au.